I'm not Raoul Pal. I'm Ash Bennington, here to kick off and host this conversation with Raoul Pal. Raoul, it's always a pleasure to be with you, but especially a pleasure to be with you today as we discuss you going down the rabbit hole on your journey in Raoul's adventures in crypto. Welcome.
It's great, Ash. We never get a chance to have a long-form conversation. So we're always kind of snatching half an hour on a daily briefing. So it's just good for you and I to properly catch up with what the hell is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so much material that you've covered on the show since September 10th. So if you've missed any episodes or if you're totally new, we're going to set the counter back to zero, start from the beginning, and tell the whole story.
See, this whole show, Raoul's Adventures in Crypto, is basically my learning journey. I am learning along with everybody else, and I'm taking everybody with me. There are no answers here. This is not like the macro world where you kind of know how things work and it's deciding which way it's going to go. Is it this path or that path? This is like, it's an unknown future, and we all have to figure it out while sprinting a marathon. So it's immensely hard work. There's incredible amounts of input of new information coming that it's overwhelming us all. So what I'm trying to do is build this framework in my head that allows me to take into account all the things that are happening without having to be an expert on all of them. And I want to be an expert on some of them. So that's how I'm approaching it. It's impossible to be an expert on everything, and anybody who tries will just die of overwork. So the best thing is that. So what am I looking at? Let's start first with, okay, I've explained to everybody now that this is the fastest adoption of any technology in all recorded history. So the chart you can see on the screen now shows that the internet back in 1997, when it had 150 million users, was growing at 63% a year. 150 million users in crypto is present day, and it's growing at 113% a year. So this is why it's so hard for us all to catch up, because it's growing at a ridiculous pace, and it's only accelerating. I mean, we've seen in the last year alone the rise of DeFi, NFTs, DAOs, central bank digital currencies, stable coins, in a way that none of us could have expected. It's just happened so fast at such scale, and that's only going to continue. And that's a core philosophy of the exponential age. How I look at this, to frame it simply, is this is currently a $2.5 trillion asset class. It is, if you compare the other asset classes, they're between 150 and 300 trillion until you get to derivatives, which are 1 quadrillion. And then when you get to FX, it's multiple quadrillions. So the reality is, if we continue this rate of adoption, we should get to an equivalent size asset class in these digital assets. And that would make them worth 200 trillion. We have never, in all of human history, been given an opportunity that an entire asset class, not a stock, not a single token, an entire asset class goes up 100x in value, probably by the end of this decade. So as I've talked about before, this is, I think, the largest distribution of wealth and fastest distribution of wealth in all recorded history. Because unlike most other wealth distributions, things like railroads, phones, even computers, and even the internet, they accrue to giant companies. This is accruing to tokens which anybody can participate in, because you can own a fraction of a token. So Bitcoin, as of today, is 60-something thousand. By the time this interview comes out, my guess is going to be a bit higher. But you can own a small fraction. You can have $10 in it. So everybody can participate in this, right? This is incredible. And this is why I'm so passionate about this space. Is I was driven on a mission after 2008 and 2012, the European crisis, to tell people about the risks and opportunities. I didn't want somebody to come to me and said, why didn't I know? My job, the whole job of Real Vision, is to make sure everybody knows. So I've been banging the table as loudly as possible saying, look, there are no certainties in this world, but this is the highest probability opportunity I've ever seen and the biggest magnitude of any opportunity I've ever seen in my entire career or I've ever heard about. So that's the scale, and that's why I am crazy interested in this. I have been following Metcalfe's law as my guide for this. Metcalfe's law is about how do you value a network, and it's about basically the number of people on the network plus the number of connections between those people. And the more connections and the more applications built on top of those people, the more valuable it is. So the biggest network is currently Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has less applications built on it than Ethereum does, but it has more users. So it's immensely valuable. It has the store of value proposition that most people are familiar with. What is interesting is adoption effects seem to repeat themselves. It seems to be a human behavioral thing. So if you look at this next chart, Bitcoin now is basically exactly following Bitcoin 2013 in price structure. It's weird. And this is not a chart I've just pulled up today. I've been following this for a year and a half once I first started discovering Metcalfe's law. And I'm like, bloody hell, this is weird. But it gives you a rough idea. I don't expect it to be perfect, but it gives you a rough idea. And what I'm expecting is a gigantic rally into year end. And we'll talk a bit about an extended cycle in a sec.
It's a spooky chart. It's a fractal chart. It shows the self-similarity of growth within Bitcoin at different points in the adoption cycle.
Yeah, and if you remember, 2013 was a hell of an adoption cycle. It was the initial one, and it had some violent moves. It's kind of suggesting violent moves. You know, just by using that chart, it gets me somewhere like 300,000 Bitcoin price range. Okay, that's above most people's expectations, but I don't see any reason why the chart's not going to work. And we'll come a bit more about how this cycle plays out in a sec. But the other killer chart is once I start discovering Metcalfe's law, I start realizing that Ethereum's exactly following Bitcoin's last cycle. And it's like, oh my God, this is spooky. I mean, I've got it actually on my Bloomberg in real time, and it almost works. Tick for tick. I've never seen anything like it. And that gives a cycle projection for Ethereum of 20,000. And again, I actually think it's going to overshoot. But I thought, well, if my logic about Metcalfe's law is right, then these layer ones that we'll talk about later should also fit. And bizarrely, here's the chart of Solana against Ethereum in the last cycle. When Ethereum was the darling, the new breakthrough, it's exactly following. And the same is true of Terra. It's exactly following. It's like, wow. So as these different protocols get adoption, they're all behaving in the same way. While Bitcoin is repeating its early cycle of massive adoption. So for me, this is super interesting. And again, I don't expect these to be perfect, but they're contextualizing network adoption, which is, I think, everything in this space for the time being, until we start moving into some of the other things. So how do I think this plays out? Because that's what everybody cares about. I honestly think we're going to have a ridiculous year end. But here's the rub, is we've got different people, actors in the business now. So if you are BlackRock or you are Tudor and you have Bitcoin at end of year, if you are BlackRock, and let's say I'm right and Bitcoin goes up 4x into the end of year or 3x, you are going to rebalance and sell some Bitcoin. If you are Tudor, you come into the end of the year, you want to lock in your gains because you get paid your annual performance fee in January, so you will probably flatten out your P&L. So what happens is we might see selling towards the end of December, which the market is going to go, the cycle's finished. Because everybody's kind of expecting a December end, because it was 2013 and 2017 where the Bitcoin cycle ended in December. However, I think the structure has changed. I think there's a couple of things going on that will elongate the cycle. One is everybody is onboarding. The more the price goes up, the more the institutions onboard. Institutions are weird beasts. They tend to operate quarterly. So you come into January, everybody's got approval is going to start onboarding and allocating January, February, March. So that sell-off from the rebalancing will be bought by the new institutions entering the space as they increase their allocations. Additionally, hedge funds have a brand new P&L January 1st. And what they like to do is put on risk. And this will be the bet that they'll put on. So my guess is we see more of that, and that drives prices further than we expect. I'm kind of thinking there is a probability, a reasonable probability, call it a 30, 40% chance that Ethereum gets to 40,000 and Bitcoin, whether it gets to 300 or 400, I don't know. And there's even an up chance of more. I think we've got a spot ETF that comes in the middle of that, and probably an Ethereum ETF that comes. Then we've got the other big game in town, which is the fact that Ethereum has no supply. There's about 10 or 11% of all available Ethereum on exchanges. Everything else is locked away in smart contracts, cold storage, DeFi, NFTs, and then staking. Because everybody wants the ETH 2.0 to come, so everybody's staking their ETH for the yield. And that takes it off and locks it away until after that. And then that ETH comes onto the market gradually. So I think the cycle probably goes on till the summer. I think almost certainly till March, but possibly to the summer, which will give us higher prices and a different cycle structure than we've seen before. I could be wrong. I'm not betting the entire ranch on it, but that's how I think it plays out. And if I'm right about the network adoption, then these other layer ones like Solana, Terra, Avalanche, Cardano, and some of the others are going to be super explosive. But in a risk-reward basis, they're riskier. They're not as deep a network as Ethereum is. Ethereum, to me, remains the best bet in the world from a risk-adjusted standpoint. It may not do the most in price of all, but for a major asset, my guess is it gets pretty close to Bitcoin's market cap. So I think it probably, in the end, somewhere doubles in relative valuation versus Bitcoin. I don't think the market quite expects that, but maybe that kind of short period of the flippening would be the end of the cycle when, everybody punches the air, all the, the Bitcoin guys get pissed off because, Ethereum's outperformed, and then we get a larger correction. But anyway, that's how I see it. And that's a lot of work that I've been writing Global Macro Investor, in Real Vision Pro for Macro Insiders, from speaking to people, understanding the structure from people like, the on-chain analysis from, Will Clement and Willy Woo and others, looking at the technical analysts that we've had on Real Vision, Crypto Sniper, all of these people getting a distillation from Plan B stock to flow. And so I'm forming a whole macro view around the space, the next kind of 6 to 9 months in the space, from all of these kind of conversations that are happening on Real Vision.
One of the interesting parts about your journey is that you're no longer just thinking about this in terms of Bitcoin and Ethereum. You're looking at DAOs, the Metaverse, NFTs. Give us a little sense of that journey.
Yeah, this is a journey I'm hurtling down, and I'm trying to figure this out because this shit is moving fast. And it's wildly complex. It's coming from small seeds of ideas that are exploding, and nobody knows where they're going either. But people are kind of contextualizing them. The first one that I've been trying to figure out is social tokens. That's something that Kevin Kelly, I asked him, because him and I share the same fascination. We think it's going to be literally the disruptor, the big mass market consumer adoption of everything, which right now is NFTs, but I think it's going to be social tokens. So I've asked Kevin to go and research into this. And I've also, been talking to all sorts of people to find out where this is going. And what is making me understand is that culture is becoming the investment. Yat Siu, on his interview, the chairman of Animoca, which was an unbelievable interview, talked about that this could create universal basic equity. So I've been talking in the past about, the ability to have digital identity can give us a chance of having universal basic income because you can sell your data and identity to platforms that currently just harvest it for free. I think that's coming, but maybe it's not as big as universal basic equity, which means the communities that you're involved with, you have a token in, and if the community is vibrant, then the value of that token rises over time. So your cultural interests align with your investment interests, align with your business interests, align with all of your activities. We're seeing that with things like Chili's, which is still pretty nascent, and its tokenization of sports clubs. I mean, those tokens still aren't worth a lot of money considering the fan base of, what does Man United have as a fan base? 1 billion people? And their token's probably worth 50 million. So it's really early days as people are trying to understand how these tokenized communities can work and how do you actually add value, because they can't be a cash grab. It's got to be a participation. So, I've been going down that journey, understanding the music industry, the media industry, sports teams, all of these things to try and understand, okay, what the hell is coming here? But what I understand is these people have communities that are gigantic. They have to rent their community back off Facebook, Google, and other things. They have no direct relationship with their customer. So if you think of a football club, the football club's direct relationship with the customer really is the 80,000 people who can come to a game on a Saturday. Even the T-shirt sales and stuff like that, they've kind of lost connection. So they have no real connection with these gigantic fan bases. But I think that brand is becoming a tangible asset as opposed to an intangible asset. And the tangibility is the fact that these social tokens and NFTs will reflect that. That's a gigantic change. So what is Man United's brand worth? And does it sit in equity or does it sit in community? I think a lot of it's going to sit in community. So that token to me should be worth a few billion. And that's where I think this is going. So maybe those tokens in the football clubs, if they tokenize in the right way and create the right experiences and create the right community, you can be a fan and make money from being a fan. And you'll be able to build businesses on these networks too. And that applies to musicians and even mega brands. Fashion brands, particularly things that have cultural significance. So this is a really huge thing.
It's not just a huge thing, Raoul, it's a democratizing thing. The world that you're describing is one where the big platforms, the Facebooks of the world, become kind of middlemen who are set up to be disintermediated by the folks who actually own the direct relationships with their own community.
Yeah, but the war is not over. And this is where people need to understand where this is going. What we are creating is a digital sovereign states, multiple, of different sizes. So we are fracturing the online world, and we'll talk about the metaverse and where this is all going later. We're fractionalizing communities into separate states. So complex adaptive societies, like human societies, organized religions, all of this stuff, generally have an organizing set of principles, a mission statement, leadership, and then a value of a method of value exchange, money, or things like in religion is like, if you do these things, you'll go to heaven. If you do these things, you'll go to hell, right? It's a value exchange. What tokenization has done is allowed every community to create a value exchange around these same principles. So you organize groups of humans. That's how all humans organize. It's as old as humans are. So, but the supercharging is the fact that you own a part of the network. Like you don't own dollars. You have to, yes, you can earn more of them, but they don't have necessarily the same output. Maybe they do. I haven't really thought that through. But here, well, no, because the dollar can get printed. While here, you own a scarcer resource, which is a part of that network. And Facebook is doing a number of things, but it has the largest community on earth. It's a disparate community of communities that all of these brands are having to use. But if you unify them with Facebook DM, which is a stable coin, which is no different than El Salvador's currency board or the currency board here in the Cayman Islands, it's a stable coin, essentially, but for use on Facebook. So what have you created? You've created the largest sovereign state in the world with the largest number of people. And like all sovereign states, the US has got millions of different communities and groups and interests and blah, blah, blah. That's what Facebook is. It's a sovereign state. There is no surprise that Zuckerberg has seen the metaverse. That is the kind of power that they want in this equation. So the battle of who owns what state in the digital world is still to be fought. And it will be a multi-state world. But in the digital sovereign state world, you get the choice to move from one community to the other. And your token is the vote. I don't want to participate in Facebook's world. I'm going to sell my token and I'm going to move across to somebody else's world. I mean, this is democracy. It's also something really exciting to me. The world is wildly polarized right now, left and right. But I think what this is doing, we'll come on to DAOs in a sec, and NFTs, because all part of this, is actually creating something that only exists in some places, which is it is progressive because it allows participation of everybody in a society, and it allows society to set rules, but it's also free market capitalism at the same time. It's like putting these two things together that are being fought over. You're a progressive, you're right wing. It's ridiculous. What this is a pragmatic, elegantly engineered solution to many of the issues the world faces. Now, that doesn't mean it's utopian, because you can have cesspool communities. You can have communities you don't agree with. You can have, humans are humans. We all do this shit all day endlessly. We all divide and conquer, do all of this stuff. But basically, right now, you're in the United States, I'm in the Cayman Islands. We have to abide by the rules of society here. And society taxes us, and we do get taxed in the Cayman Islands, contrary to everybody's belief, but in different ways. They tax us for the good of society. Some people don't want that. Well, you don't have a choice to leave. Or if you do, it's a pain in the ass. In digital sovereign states, you will decide, do you want to benefit society? Because this community believes in benefiting society, and others believe in a total anarcho-libertarianism. Fine, do it. But my guess is that we are going to coalesce around the ideas of we can look after society and have free markets. And that's kind of what Bitcoin has done, right? Bitcoin is a social token. If you think of it, if you ignore the narratives around store of value and everything else, because it's following Metcalfe's law, it's not following a store of value thing. Yes, the stock to flow does work in some respects. But what is Bitcoin? It's a group of communities that share a vision about hard money and some elements of economic and monetary freedom. There's also a group that share a belief in wealth distribution. And so what you've got is a bunch of beliefs that are on this network that everybody participates in, and it's a strong narrative. And so it does well. And should you decide, as I did, that I was getting uncomfortable with that community and society because they were not being accepting of people with broader views, I sell some of my Bitcoin tokens and move across to the Ethereum ecosystem, where everybody uses the words GM for good morning and good night, and everybody's lovely to you. It's like, that is sovereign freedom. This is a fascinating concept that I'm getting my head around. I don't think most people have figured out yet. And this is where DAOs and NFTs fit in. And again, I had no idea really how to think about this stuff, hence why I started interviewing people. And Kevin Kelly's been doing a bunch of that for me. But also, I've been doing a bunch of NFT stuff because I can see that DAOs are basically a way of getting agreement amongst people on how things should be done in a kind of weirdly democratic way. Will it work fully? I have no fucking clue, but it's really interesting. As Jamie Burke mentioned to me, he's like, what is interesting here is this is like the world's biggest economic experiment in real time. There are literally thousands or tens of thousands of economic experiments about economic ecosystems all being run. Some collapse, some succeed. I mean, that's amazing, because economics was a model-based thing. Now we're running experiments with real data and real money and seeing what survives and what doesn't. And DAOs will go through the same. What is going to work in that structure? I have no idea. But it's a way of organizing complex adaptive societies. The DAO is basically the set of rules by which the society will operate. I mean, this is big stuff, right?
What strikes me is just how comprehensive this view of the space is, talking about re-engineering not just organizations, but the nation state, society, social organization more broadly. It's a hard thing to get your head around. Where do you think this goes?
I don't know. But the more I reread The Fourth Turning, the more prophetic the bloody book is. And it says that all institutions will get rebuilt from the ground up. We're rebuilding states, corporations, communities, money, store of value, economics, all at the same time, done by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, of the smartest people in the engineer, economists, finance guys, technologists, developers, mathematicians. Everybody is working on this. This is like, it's one of the most beautiful things I've seen, is mankind saying, fuck it, we'll do it ourselves. And we will figure it out. And we don't know the answers. Everybody in the space, except the hardest core maximalists, said, we do not know the answers, but we're going to try our damnedest to see how far we can get. I love this. This is how it should be. This is one of the greatest movements I've ever seen, if not the greatest movement, because it's political, it's economic, it's financial, it's cultural, it's everything, all rolled into one damn thing. And the market's splitting, the guys who are interested in DAOs and what we can do with that, the social tokens, the communities, the protocols, the DeFi guys, and we'll come on to some of these more, the layer ones, the transaction people, and everybody's going, right, we're going to solve this one. And we might fail, but those guys might learn something from us and they'll take the baton. But we're all sprinting as fast as we damn well can to create this opportunity. And this asset class is unstoppable because of its distributed nature of intelligence. The network effect of that power of intelligence and the sheer number of doggedly determined people doing things is unprecedented. We saw it with open source software. We saw it with the internet. But this has the powerful incentives built in that if you are a participant, you're not owning the equity in a company, you're owning a stake in the network, which never has happened before. So it is of a different order of magnitude. And still, I still people struggling to get across the line with Bitcoin or whatever it is, when actually we're hurtling into something much bigger. The other thing that made me think about this was NFTs. We've all seen the rise of NFTs. We all understand part of it's memes, part of it is communities, part of it's social identifiers, part of it's social identity. And I got that, and it's impossible to navigate. Right? Unless you're on Discord all day, I physically don't have the time. You know, I'm watching the Real Vision bot guys. They're developing stuff, so I'm learning from them because they're two very smart guys. I'm learning from all sorts of people on NFTs. You know, again, Yatsiu gave me some great feedback, and there's a whole bunch of people. I've been speaking to people like Bill Ty about this as well. NFTs are a cultural phenomena where people are organizing around these groups of like-minded people. And the NFT is the identifier. Some of it I don't quite like yet, because I think to be a crypto punk, it's now an elitist group, because you can't fractionalize these things. You can if you put them in a different structure, but basically you can't fractionalize a crypto punk, so you own it outright. So you're basically saying, I've spent 3.5 million on my JPEG, and therefore I'm one of this crowd, right? That's the same as me wearing a Cartier watch saying, you know, I can afford a fancy watch. I kind of don't think it's the right thing for the space, but I don't care. Who am I to judge, right? This is what people want to do. You know, I buy social identifiers all the time. Everything we all do. My house is a social identifier. I mean, we're humans, right? This is what we do. So I don't really have a problem, but it's interesting. But I'm seeing really interesting stuff when we spoke to Gary Vee. He's trying to build a media company from the ground up, as is Ashton Kushner, as is Mika Johnson. That was a fantastic underwatched interview with Mika Johnson about what Mika's doing with Aku, which is incredible. He's basically NFTing from the ground up a cartoon. So it's built on the blockchain and it turns into a whole media property. And he's already got TV rights or film rights for it.
I should say this is on Crypto Voxels, and it's available right now for anyone who wants to go take a look.
Yeah, and just search for it in Crypto Voxels, but we'll make it more available to everybody. We'll give you a tab on the page. You can go and kick around our headquarters because it's kind of fun. But so these NFTs, there's many things happening with them. And what is interesting is there's some real projects like Loot, of which it's kind of really vague on what it is. But what they're doing is kind of building a movement of people around these DAOs and these things. And then that guy, and I'm not sure it's like Punk 9526 or whatever, Anonymous. I kind of know a bit about who he is, not who he is. And he's a very serious guy. And he started writing these incredible long threads about the social importance of what this is, this cultural movement, how, because NFTs can't be thought of as securities, and they're probably protected under freedom of speech, and they're immutable and they're on the blockchain, they become something extremely precious in this world, the thing that we've all lost, our own digital self. And I'm starting to explore what this all means too, because it's bigger than I know that I'm yet understanding and that most people are understanding. And it's very early phase. I'm sure that we will have a NFT winter and a bunch of this stuff goes to zero. But a bunch of stuff won't. What is that going to be? Which of these projects are going to succeed? Which are going to remain classic identifiers? Will CryptoPunks? Probably. Bored Apes? Possibly. But then you'll find there'll be subgroups. We're going to play with NFTs at Real Vision, not to extract value from the community, but by giving people a sense of identity. Because we've got a very, very, very strong community at Real Vision. And they want to be identified as Real Vision people.
Yeah.
So that's part of what NFTs are. And maybe they are your identifier to log into stuff. Maybe it's your identity for affiliates. I have no idea. But Real Vision is going to go the social token route as well. And again, I don't know where it's all going. I'm certainly not going to stand up and say, we're going to make you rich. No. What we're going to do is create a utility token that allows people to participate in the network. And it's up to everybody who's on the network to drive value to the network. It's not about us trying to make people rich. It's about driving utility and use case to the network by all participants. And we'll see. It's a grand experiment, but I think it's going to work. And I think it's going to tie people together and have a great understanding of where this is going. So we've talked about cryptocurrency, blockchain itself. We've talked about social tokens, communities, digital sovereign states, NFTs, DAOs. These are all the conversations I'm having on Raoul's Adventures in Crypto and getting other people to have for me. Conversations that you're having for me as Santiago Velez. It's all part of this big fucking learning journey because I know this is the biggest thing and I'm trying to understand it. I had a fantastic conversation with Jamie Burke, and Jamie and I came round to the idea that we're both using the metaverse as our framing of an end state. And again, none of us know what the metaverse is, where it's going. It's this digitally fluid world between the physical and the digital world where you can move around, live, exist, work, earn, etc. But if you conceptualize the metaverse as an end state or the start of an end state, it allows you to hold all of these thoughts in your head. A digital financial system, DeFi, a digital system of organizing and corporations, DAOs, social tokens, system of money for the communities that you're in, NFTs, digital identifiers and stores of value within the digital world, and an interoperability and transferability of that value across various digital properties. All of that becomes the metaverse. This is all this Web 3.0, the metaverse, the gigantic change. So the metaverse is not, to me, who's going to win? Tim Sweeney, Mark Zuckerberg. That's just not going to happen. Apple is in the game. Google's in the game. Apple are going to give you an ability because they own this, which is a supercomputer in your hand. They're going to have the ability that those glasses you're wearing today, Ash, will give you augmented reality. So what does augmented reality mean? Does it mean Google tells you what road to take when you're walking through Manhattan? Sure. But it also means that I can have a piece of NFT art in my living room that doesn't exist in the physical world, but does to anybody I want to show it to. I can have, it's Pokemon Go as a world where these digital and physical things coexist, and we can have different experiences. I can leave you a digital map of my house because you're coming over to Little Cayman, and I say, it's only available for you. And you stick on your glasses, you've been permissioned because you've got the token, and you look at it. So all of these things, plus what everybody's doing. I mean, I think I'm speaking to the guys who are building Wild. They're doing it on Zero. What Tim Sweeney, who's building on Unreal Engine. What people like Alexandra Fernandez is doing is creating metaverses for companies and organizations. We've got giant corporations, we've got small people, we've got crypto voxels, Decentraland. They're not going to be one or the other. It's the same way as these communities. We will be interoperable. We'll be able to move fluidly between places that better suit our needs, desires, communities, etc. There will be some giant winners from this. Gigantic trillion-dollar winners. I don't know who they are. It's hard to even bet on it. You can bet on some of this social tokens. There's like 3 or 4 companies that have platforms for that. And I talked about those, people like Rally, Flow, I think Luxo's coming through, Chili's. NFTs you can get involved in, but it's really hard because there's so many. It's the opposite of social token platforms where there's few. NFTs, there's millions. So, you just have to kind of suck it and see. DAOs, they're still early. There's a few DAOs people are investing in, things like Friends with Benefits, super interesting. And the metaverse, how the hell do we invest in this? I don't know yet. There are some opportunities. You can buy Decentraland, Sandbox. Sandbox is a very interesting one. Lots of people buying, Snoop's got land in Sandbox. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So I think of this, the metaverse as the end state, and it allows you to hold all of these things in your head without having to be the expert. It's the macro way. Here's the probabilistic path. Because then, if not, you end up trying to argue on everything. How do DAOs work? I don't know how they're going to evolve. And that's okay. But I just do know that they're going to evolve. So that's how I'm thinking this. This is why I'm fascinated with the metaverse. Not some dystopian, utopian, how's it going to play out? Is this Ready Player One? I don't give a shit about that. There's too many people working on too many different ways. We will get our choice in how we want to live. And my guess is once we have digital identifiers that have things like zero-knowledge proofs in them, something we haven't really explored on Real Vision yet because it's still pretty early. But zero-knowledge proofs basically give you a cryptographic block between your data and the authentication. So it can be authenticated without question, trusted authentication, without actually seeing my data. So that allows us to operate anonymously in a digital world. Now, our government's going to adopt that for their wallets for CBDCs. Our government's going to have their set of documents that are publicly available and other things that we want privately available. Who the hell knows? But I do know is the other end state is everything's going on this. Everything. Your communities you're a member of will be in your wallet and they will go up and down in value if your community is thriving. You will have the cryptocurrency bets, but I think of those as communities too as well now. So I've kind of given up with the whole idea that these are different things. They're all the same thing. And those will go up and down in value. You will have your digital identifier that I can share with you. And what's really powerful is what DeFi is going to do for everybody too. And I'm struggling to get my head around DeFi because it's moving and it's failing and it's succeeding and all of these things, all of these economic experiments. But basically, stuff like Terra Network, you can just put money, stake the network and get 20%. And they're basically risk-free if you want to own that network. Same with Ethereum. This is mind-blowing. So you can just quickly park your assets by flicking a screen and get different yields. And then there's going to be yield farming, all the different ways of getting multiple yield products. And eventually we'll get to a system of risk weighting. This is a high risk 20% yield. This is a low risk 3% yield. You just do it accordingly. There's no middlemen. It's just applications layers being built on DeFi. And DeFi is borrowing, it's lending. You'll be able to borrow against your token holdings and say, look, my portfolio of token holdings is worth 200 grand. Can I use that as a deposit for a house? Yes, you can. Because of the beauty of these digital assets and how they're recorded and who's got the ownership. This is where this is all going. And it's going to happen at lightning fucking speed because the central bank digital currencies enable all of this, which is what people don't think. They think, well, we don't want no more fiat. Forget it. Fiat is the sovereign state. That's how they want to run their currency regime. That's fine. You don't need to keep all of your money in that currency regime. This is the new world. In fact, you don't need to anyway. You can switch between yen and francs and whatever you want anyway. And you can buy gold. This is just an extension of that. They want their taxes because you live in a society where somebody believes that the right answer is societal benefit. So society together is stronger if they share some of the wealth amongst others so other people get a support. I believe in that too. I know it's wildly unfashionable with some people in the Bitcoin space. I have no problem. I'm a European. I believe in society. How we make that society is up to society itself. So this is how big this all is, Ash. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you can see my thinking just moves on and on and on. It's quite, I mean, I'm now so excited about all of this. I just can't unsee any of it.
One of the fascinating things to me as someone who's doing this journey alongside of you, talking to people, is just how infrequently people from different silos of these worlds talk to each other. And the $100 trillion question, something you alluded to, is how all the puzzle pieces ultimately fit together.
But it's like AI doing it. It's the hive mind, right? I passionately talk about the hive mind. This is the hive mind, as I said. Engineers, developers, mathematicians, economists, finance people, all coming together and working on the same project independently, running experiments. I mean, get your head around that. We've seen the power of the hive mind in real vision, something we're going to do more as we start moving towards Web 3.0 world for real vision, which we're hurtling towards. The hive mind allocates capital better than individuals do. That's mind-blowing. The real vision bot portfolio, which is voted on by the real vision community, has outperformed Bitcoin. It's outperformed the algorithms that the bot produces. It is, and it's the same with the macro portfolio. And those portfolios aren't run in a way that a portfolio person would tell you to run them. One day Terra's right in there, the next day it's out and Cardano's in. And it's like, this is no way to run a portfolio. Guess what? The crowd is smarter. And when you put millions of people onto solving issues, then we get outcomes. So like regulation's a big issue. We need to get it right. So what do the guys of the Terra network do? We're going to go to court. What did Ripple do? We're going to go to court. What did Coinbase do? We're going to stand up and fight. What you're doing is creating, and then individuals wrote to senators and congressmen and everybody saying, no, it's the power of all of these people in this network is unbelievable. Nobody's going to go against them because of the votes and the money. It's like, I can't get my head around how magical this is. And again, we're humans. We will fuck it up relentlessly. We will create awful things. We will abuse power. We will create monopolies, all of that. But this is a new way. And a new way maybe can give us another 200 years of renaissance, a new renaissance. That's what I think is coming. Because the other journey I'm doing on Real Vision is the exponential age in its broadest context, which is then the rise of computational power, AI, genetic sciences, 5G, network, all of these things, EV, green energy, all of these massive exponential trends, of which crypto is part of this. And it's all coming together into an entirely new world. We're living in probably the greatest time in all human history. And exactly like the fourth turning, it also feels like the worst time in human history, where the worst of humanity has come out and we're seeing nations and people ripped apart. But from that, we're building a new world.
So talking about this renaissance, one question that I know Real Vision community members are going to have is how does this influence your view of Real Vision and what our role is going to be as we move forward into this space?
It was about 2 years ago that I started to realize that it was pointless to be just a media company creating video. And actually, we created something better, which is we created a community. And it's an incredible community. I mean, I just got an email today, typical Real Vision, somebody who designs nuclear submarines writes to us saying, you've changed my life. And we've had that from incredible people. Our Hive Mind is almost unparalleled, I think, probably within any community I've ever seen. And I don't say that because I'm a co-founder of Real Vision. I say it because it's true. It's ridiculous. And people have been telling us, we want to be more part of Real Vision. We want to be part of this community. We want to be part of this network. We want to help the business. We want to just drive this mission statement, believe in what that is. And that's lending itself to Web 3.0, is how do you get the community to be really part of Real Vision? How do they share in it? And that's, as I said, probably a social token. That's NFTs. I want to reinvent how brokerage is done. I want to reinvent how asset management is done by the community, for the benefit. I want to use AI in a way that's not been done by others, which is to use AI to give back to the community as opposed to extract from the community to serve ads. I want to do stuff that nobody's done before. And we're working on so many kind of secret projects, and there's some game changing. The other thing that's not secret is we're working hard and fast on education, because I need to educate people, get them up to speed. I don't want people to say, why didn't we know? I'm trying to give everybody the tools, everybody the understanding, and then everybody the place, the community they can hang out where they feel safe to ask questions or give ideas and build the community, the knowledge of the community together. That's what I want to do here, because then we've got the world's most powerful community, and the community are the people who have the power, not some corporation. So that's what I'm thinking of. Other exciting things we're up to as well is we've just started our show with the Defiant. The Defiant, a fantastic group. They're the cutting edge of kind of crypto media. Their focus has been on DeFi, which is very applicable to our audience who are interested in finance. And DeFi is hard to get your head around. And I wanted to bring the macro, the DeFi, the crypto worlds all together. And that's that. And what we're doing there is bringing new people into our community. And there's going to be other announcements about communities that we're bringing into the Real Vision community as well, which are going to be very exciting. So there's a shit ton going on, which is, I think, the official measure of how much is going on. It's a lot, and there's a lot of change to come. But the idea is to create the best place to learn, accumulate knowledge, disseminate knowledge, and understand what's going on and how to best benefit from it. That's what I want to get to, the kind of vision of the future.
Raoul, talking of community, one of the things that we're passionate about here at Real Vision is opening up the conversation to the community. We've got a lot of questions here from an AMA. What do you say? You want to do a quick speed round?
Yeah, let's do it. Always love the questions from everybody, because again, it personalizes it. It's not me behind the camera being, the voice of God. It's like, we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure it out. So yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. First question comes to us from Fabrizio T. What is the single most important factor that will drive financial institutions to adopt crypto?
Price. It's simple. The price number go up, more get involved. And then after that is regulatory clarity, which is happening. We've just seen that, I think it was the SEC, not the SEC, I can't remember who the hell, has just said that they can hold crypto on their balance sheets, which allows them market-making functions and prime broking. So, people are like, well, they're not going to hold it on their balance sheet because of the risk weighting. It's not about having it as an asset on your balance sheet. It's about having it in your bloody prime brokerage and offering it to hedge funds.
Alan asks, Raoul, what do you think are the 3 biggest day-to-day impacts of blockchain technology on people's lives in the next 5 to 10 years?
I honestly, within 5 to 10 years, I think it will be our digital identity, our store of value, our way, our digital method of ownership, our ownership of rights, IP rights. I think it'll spread to insurance contracts. It'll be the way you earn money, yield, the way you borrow, and how you identify yourself within the communities within which you live, these digital sovereign states. So apart from that, very little impact.
A great and very nuanced question comes to us from Janice about the fourth turning. I'm just going to simplify it here. For people who may not be familiar with the book, give us a sense of what the fourth turning is about and how you see it as being relevant to the exponential age thesis.
So the fourth turning is a book about demographics and how demographic cycles repeat themselves. And Neil Howe and William Strauss went through in great detail back in the 90s these demographic transitions through time. And you get these turning points where basically a full 3 or 4 generations of people have gone through, and you get a moment of change. And the transition from baby boomers to millennials is a moment of gigantic change, because the millennials know nothing of the lives that the boomers live, which was the relationship to World War II and then the 50s and all of that. So it breaks. And what happens is the world is not fit for the new entrants. So the Zoomers and the millennials want the world made in a different way. And so usually you get societal change writ large. Sometimes it can be catastrophic change, can be warfare. Other times it can be social change. And their argument has proved prophetic on where this is going, how you kind of ends with financial crashes, and out of the financial crashes comes people realizing we need to do things differently. And generally speaking, even the previous 2 elections are pretty much in the book, even though it was written 20 odd years ago. And the idea is, from all of this, innovation accelerates if it's the right answer to the fourth turning, i.e. not war. Innovation accelerates as everybody reinvents a new set of institutions. So if you remember, most of the institutions that we have in our world came out of both World War I and World War II, the rules-based global order system. All of that is going to get thrown out and changed. That doesn't mean we reject a rules-based global order system, but we have to adopt it for a modern world. And that's what I've spent a lot of this interview talking about today, is the magnitude of these changes.
Yeah. Jay Michael, we're hearing so much about the impending bull market and that it should last roughly 3 to 6 months. After that time, is the market expected to largely recede, or are we entering a time where technology will continue to push it ever upward?
It's a good question. I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously, it's a very volatile asset class. It's a logarithmic. So you can have these 50% pullbacks within the same trend, much like Amazon, Apple, and stuff like that. There is also periods of Amazon and Apple that have gone sideways for 2 or 3 years after a 50% correction. It's something like that. I don't think the corrections will be as deep in the main protocols. In other stuff, it will be. It's a risk curve. It's what normal happens. My guess is either the corrections are shorter and sharper. Actually, I don't know. Shorter and sharper, or just shallower and longer, or none of the above. I don't know. It makes it really hard to navigate. But, I'm actually on the side setting up a fund of funds to exactly deal with this issue, because it's impossible to know what to do.
Well, as we sort all of that out, here's a question from Mike H. about the data. Raoul, where do you get your crypto adoption statistics from?
Remy, Tito. Remy's my co-founder of Real Vision, and also my macro analyst, runs a massive database that we have. And Remy builds out all these models. So he's the font of all knowledge.
Georgie A., how do you see the transition from a bank credit system with all its moving parts, credit bureaus, scores, stores, etc., to a collateralized or not crypto system like the one we are experiencing in DeFi right now?
It's a migration. Don't expect the lights to go on, lights go off. It's a migration. Just happens over time. So it's happening already. It's just not consumer friendly yet. I mean, I steer away from the space right now, but I think DeFi explodes in the next bear market or sideways market for crypto. Let's say crypto trades sideways for 2 years. We're all going to be staking, looking for yield, looking for opportunities to make money out of our coins over that period of time. So, and there are risks with that too, as there are with all yields and all returns. So we just have to navigate that world too. What's the risk? Half of us don't know. Stuff gets hacked, stuff gets, some of these protocols don't work in DeFi world because it's all experimental. Nobody's saying I've got the perfect solution here. It's as I said, one of the millions of economic experiments being run in real time.
Carl C. Hi, Raoul. Besides the ETH 2.0 transition, can you go into more depth about why you believe the crypto peak in this cycle will be Q1 or Q2 of 2022? Will hedge funds, institutions, sovereign wealth funds, etc., be the main catalyst for that?
Yeah, I think I covered this at the beginning of this interview. I think, yes, the change in the nature of the participants will change this. But we're going to get through a selling cycle first. A bunch of people need to pay a lot of tax bills. There's a bunch of people who need to reallocate their assets because crypto's gone up a lot. And there's a bunch of hedge funds who want to close their P&Ls for year end. So it's going to get volatile towards the end of the year. Everyone's going to call the end of the cycle. And then I think we're going to see a face-ripping rally.
Talking of which, here's a nice cheery one from Daniel. What is the biggest risk in crypto now that nobody is talking about? And what is the worst case scenario for crypto being regulated?
I don't think there's a worst case scenario. I think there's too much money, too many voters, too many people. And I've talked about this. There is a grand compromise will happen. And it'll be a new set of digital asset laws, and that'll be another fourth turning. That's moving away from securities laws, 1934. That's the previous turning where we had the world wars, and we're now going to a different one. So what is the risk? The risk is going to be a boom bust cycle. The risk is we get a ridiculous extended bubble in this cycle and then a collapse. Late entrants get hurt. It's that. I don't think there's any real risks to this whole thing. I just don't see it. I just don't see any of the FUD. Tether, solvable. Just go to a different stable coin. Regulation, just go to a different country. I just don't. There's no stopping this. There is no stopping this.
This one from Tim L. What effect will the Fed tapering have on crypto prices going forward, especially Bitcoin and Ether?
Over time, once the economy gets through a tightening, partial tightening, and reaches its trend rate of growth, which I suspect is kind of 1% or so, my guess is there will be other assets that will start to perform that will get investments. And I think the Exponential Age stocks, for example, will do very well over time, and they will have a competition for crypto, and crypto will be just not the only game in town. So that's kind of how I think about it. A credit cycle, most people in the crypto markets aren't involved in the credit cycle so much. So it's not a credit market thing, but at the margin, it'll take hedge funds out, institutions out. So credit cycle, the business cycle still rules most things, but in these exponential adoption curves, it has a much lesser pronounced effect.
Final question, Raoul, and this is my favorite one. It comes to us from Gurukam. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but he wants to know what our advice would be to a 25-year-old right now. Here's my answer. I've got two. Number one, learning is a lifelong process. I know that may sound a little onerous to you at 25, but it's actually just the opposite. It takes the pressure off of you. This is something that you are going to be learning, experiencing for decades and decades to come. It's one of the reasons why Real Vision is betting so big on education and something we're so passionate about. And second, Raoul, this is a lesson I learned actually directly from you, so it's probably a fitting note to end on, which is you can't be paralyzed by perfection, by the need for certainty, the need to always be right. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, get comfortable taking risk, get comfortable managing risk and understanding the limitations of risk. I think for me, that's probably the most valuable lesson I've learned in the last year. Raoul, what are you thinking about? What's your advice for a 25-year-old?
On that point, I've said it before, there's two zones. One is the comfort zone, and the other is where the magic happens. They don't overlap. That once you learn that lesson in life, the magic happens outside your comfort zone always. So for the 25-year-old, you have a massive advantage over all of us. Culture as an investment is something you grew up with. You will spot the trends, the cultural trends that you can get involved in and you will make money from it. This is a different world. You don't have to be the guy who needs to understand stock markets or currencies or yield curves. You don't have to be that person anymore. You're liberated to say, I've seen this trend on TikTok and I think this is big. And you can be part of it because of the tokenization of the world or the NFTs. So you have an advantage over me, over Ash, over anybody. It's an incredible opportunity to rewrite the rules based around how you see the world. At 25 years old, you grew up in games. You grew up in a digital world. You understand digital value. Use your advantage.
Raoul, as we wrap here, final thoughts.
I think people now can understand what it is we're trying to do here. We're trying to understand this new world, the digital asset world, along with the macro world, because they are the same world. They're just different areas of it. It's important to understand the gold market, the industrial commodities market, the currency market, or the crypto market. I just think that the crypto markets offer the biggest catalyst of change and the biggest opportunity. I have no idea where this is actually going. So what you're doing when you're watching me do this, or you do this, Ash, and all of the people we invite, we're just learning. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out the world's biggest opportunity so nobody can say, I didn't know. We want to give everybody the tools, democratize that information, and allow people to participate in literally the biggest economic, cultural revolution the world has ever seen.
Well, there you have it, the macro view, the biggest big picture. Raoul, thank you so much for joining me.
That's lots of fun. It's the first time I've really managed to get the whole thing across. So hopefully people have found it useful.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, everyone.